Carry on, my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. Oh, yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Stone Gasman live from New York City. And tonight we are going to be doing an audio commentary for Jeremy Kagan's Heroes, starring Henry Winkler, Sally Field, and Harrison Ford. And if you are not watching it on this Blu-ray, then you can get it from Amazon for only $4, and it's very much worth it because I can officially confirm the original 1977 theatrical ending is on that Amazon rental version. So I will give everybody just about 2-3 minutes to get set up. And as we do this introduction here, yeah. First and foremost, in the chat, That Muse, lovely to see you. And John, I would love to follow along, but all my go-to free streaming websites have the wrong song at the end. Yeah. Like I said, and the thing is that I really wish I knew the true actual story as to why the song has been missing from the print for 40 plus years. Although, except if you caught it on television, I never caught it on television. It's not like like an ABC Sunday night movie or anything like that. I never saw it played. I honestly never saw it played when I was growing up. Maybe I was in the wrong region of the country. I don't know. But yeah, it's very, very true that Heroes is marked by the fact that when it came out in 1977, it came out November 4th. Universal released it, and it had a budget of $3.3 million. I was inaccurate in a Twitter post thinking it was 1 million. No, actually, it was 3.3. But it made 33 million. So it was a hit. Now, true, Henry Winkler was probably the biggest television star of the 1970s. And, Field and Ford, of course, were about to become the biggest stars of the 1980s. She won 2 Oscars. Harrison Ford went on to do Indiana Jones. And, of course, Star Wars, which came out right before Heroes, gave it a good boost. Although, just to let everybody know right now, I don't want to disappoint everybody that Harrison Ford is only in 20 minutes of this movie. But man, those 20 minutes are incredible. And it's really, really great to see Harrison Ford play a character right after Han Solo, and yet it doesn't have a trace of Han Solo in it. Also, that there isn't a trace of the Fonz in Henry Winkler's performance. There isn't a trace of Forrest Gump's mother in Sally Field's performance. You get the idea. Although, just to let you know, Sally Field, she pretty much has the same, more or less the same character that she did in Smokey and the Bandit, which was the #2 box office hit of the year with Burt Reynolds and everything. Look, I've seen Smokey and the Bandit a couple times. It's a fun movie. I get it with the Coors Light and how they couldn't. In certain states, it was illegal to transport it and have it and everything. So, look, I get Smokey and the Bandit. It was about Coors Light beer and how it was extremely important to this section of the United States. I get it, okay? And it's a fun movie. It is a fun movie. It's just not a favorite. But it is great to see Sally Field pretty much do a slightly different variation on that runaway bride character, as you will all see. So, at any rate, I think we should all go ahead and get started. Oh, except also say hi to Cheska. Lovely to see you. And it was the NBC Monday Night Movie in September of 1978. A quick turnaround. Wow. The song was intact on TV. That's insane. But I think, I think it makes sense considering, how, the timing of the movie, the timing of its release, it hit home because this was right after Vietnam had ended and everything. And as John would say about First Blood, it struck a nerve. At any rate, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So paused on the Universal logo, and we'll count down 3, 2, 1, and play. Now, I want to open up this commentary with the script reading. Yes, I have a copy of the Heroes screenplay, and I forgot to put the volume down. I'm so sorry about that. A Terman Foster Company production. But yes, I have the actual script for Heroes, which is a March 1st, 1977 script. And I want to read to you the opening going along with this opening. Exterior Central Park, day. Statues of heroes, titles. Camera studies the heroic statues in the park until Zach Dunn is revealed. A cop watches him suspiciously. Zach looks innocent. The cop moves on. Once the cop has left, Zach takes out a small can of red spray paint and writes Eureka on the already graffiti-covered statue. Central Park, path, day. Camera pans up from shopping bag lady who is rummaging through a waste can filled with junk to reveal Zach jogging away from the scene of his quote-unquote crime. Exterior Times Square art store window, day. A computer picture of Zach's face appears in close-up. Through the window, we see Zach buying this picture of himself. He rolls it up and exits the store. Exterior street, day. Zach crosses the street onto the island on which the Times Square recruiting station stands. And that, you should be seeing a printout of Henry Winkler's face right there. Zach's point of view, angle on recruiting station. Through the glass walls, he sees recruiting sergeant talking to 4 teenage boys, 2 white and 2 black. Zach stops for a moment to watch. The sergeant is enthusiastic. Recruiting station, day. Zach walks in and hears the last of the sergeant's speech. Now, I do want to point out that this was back when we had porno theaters in big cities like this. Gerard Damiano, the director of Deep Throat, was still making porno movies at that time. There's the recruiting station. Sergeant, stick to the combat zone out there. The sergeant pushes Zach out the door. Exterior, recruiting station, day. Zach grabs at the sergeant's jacket. The sergeant swings around and punches Zach, who falls to the sidewalk. That's the opening according to the original script, which, of course, this was written by James Carabatsos, who was a real-life Vietnam veteran. And this, of course, it has an actual credit for a script revision of David Freeman. But at the same time, I found this script basically in the basement of this Baltimore store, which had like lots of books and movie memorabilia, and I had to pick it up. But on top of all that, it also had a shooting schedule. Heroes was shot from March 9th, 1977 to April 21st, 1977. So it was a 6-week shoot. And I'm pretty sure it came in on time and on budget. And it's directed by Jeremy Kagan, who we will talk about as well. But here we see Henry Winkler, being thrown out of the recruiting station right here. Now, you got to remember that this came out pretty much right after Vietnam had finally ended. And this also came out right after Star Wars, which, as many people in the Lucasfilm documentary like to point out, it sort of brought us out of a depression that we had in the 70s right after Vietnam. But up until then, there wasn't many movies that actually focused on Vietnam. I mean, Hollywood was, they were scared to death to touch that subject. And really, I mean, there was the documentary Hearts and Minds, 1974, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary. But aside from that, Heroes was kind of the first one out the gate. I mean, in 1978, of course, we had Sidney J. Fury's Boys of Company C, and The Deer Hunter from Michael Cimino, and also Coming Home, which I talked about yesterday during my FTA commentary. But yeah, so it took a while for Hollywood to dare go into the direction of Vietnam and the after effects of Vietnam on both the country and the soldiers who came home, disabled physically and psychologically. And see, Henry Winkler basically plays a Vietnam veteran who, seems to be in a rather, predicament at the moment where he's dealing with psychological issues and PTSD. Although, to be perfectly honest, the term PTSD wasn't really officially coined until 1980. Only 3 years after Heroes. And of course, there were movies before, like the story of G.I. Joe and, my favorite film of all time, The Best Years of Our Lives, which did have early looks at PTSD, and even films like All Quiet on the Western Front, showcase that shell-shocked brutality that soldiers had to endure during the war. That's the thing. There had been different names of it over the years. There have been different variations of those names, but it wasn't until 1980 until it was actually coined. So, James Carabatsos was, in the 1970s with all these discussions going on about Vietnam soldiers and what they were going through, coming home to a place where things had significantly changed, and people had changed their minds about the war and everything. It was a crazy, crazy situation. But it is great to see Henry Winkler do something that's outside of Happy Days. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I have to throw it out there now. Is I did an audio commentary on Night Shift, which came out in 1982. And it stars Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton in his very first film, and also in very small roles, Kevin Costner and Shannon Doherty, also making their film debuts. And it was directed by Ron Howard, and it's basically about two guys in the New York City morgue who decide to start a prostitution business. And so Michael Keaton became a star overnight because of Night Shift, but Henry Winkler plays a very, very identifiable and likable straight man. and here again, not a trace of the Fonz in it. In fact, from here on out, I don't want to mention the Fonz again because, well, look, the truth, and I mentioned this on my Night Shift commentary as well, in that I'm just not a fan of Happy Days. It has nothing to do with Winkler. It has nothing to do with Winkler or even his character. I am just not a fan of the show. I never really found it all that funny. And I can understand after the massive success of American Graffiti, which starred Ron Howard, who was also the star of the Happy Days show. I can understand why that struck a chord throughout the country, wanting to, be nostalgic about the 1950s. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't experience the 50s, so I'm not nostalgic about it. In fact, one of my favorite movies of all time from 1998, Pleasantville, is sort of like an anti-nostalgia piece when it comes to the 50s. But a brilliant film. You should all check it out. But so why don't we start with the screenwriter, James Carabatsos, because like I said, he's basically known for also directing two other Vietnam films, which both came out in the mid-1980s. The first one is Heartbreak Ridge, directed by Clint Eastwood. And the other is Hamburger Hill, directed by John Irvin. Now, Heartbreak Ridge, basically the title comes from the Battle of Heartbreak Ridge in the Korean War, where Eastwood's character had earned the Medal of Honor. And so it stars Clint Eastwood, and he also produced and directed based on James Carabatsos' screenplay, and it came out in 1986, and it was a huge hit. It made $120 million. And then, of course, we had Hamburger Hill in 1987, excuse me, which was about a May 1969 assault during the Vietnam War by the U.S. Army's 3rd Battalion 187th Infantry, 101st Airborne Division, Air Mobile Screaming Eagles on a ridge of Dong Ap Bia Mountain near the Laotian border in current central Vietnam. The ridge was a well-fortified position, including trench works and bunkers of the North Vietnamese Army, and American military records of the battle referred to the mountain as Hill 937, its map designation having been derived from it being 937 meters. That film wasn't a huge hit, though. It only made $14 million, released by Paramount in 1987. And those are basically the three big films that James Carabatsos wrote, and they all start with the letter H. Yeah, Heroes, Heartbreak Ridge, and Hamburger Hill. I got to admit, I haven't seen Hamburger Hill and Heartbreak Ridge in years, and I should probably revisit them at some point. But let me just double check and see. I mean, that can't be all that he's written. I refuse to believe that's all that he has written. And he didn't write much else. I mean, he did write a movie called Beyond the Reef from 1979, starring some people I do not recognize. Takoyo lives by the Bora Bora Lagoon in the South Pacific, where he found a man-eating tiger shark when it was an orphan baby, just a foot long. Okay. Underground Aces, 1981, with Dirk Benedict and T.K. Carter. And let's see, then Heartbreak. Oh, No Mercy. Oh, he did write a movie with Richard Gere and Kim Basinger called No Mercy. I've never seen it. But yeah, he did write that one. A Chicago detective seeking to avenge his partner's death travels to New Orleans, where he unexpectedly becomes involved in a cat and mouse game of survival. And the last film that he wrote was a television movie from 2001 called The Lost Battalion, directed by Russell Mulcahy and starring Ricky Schroeder, Phil McKee, and Jamie Harris, which is a fact-based war drama about an American battalion of over 500 men, which gets trapped behind enemy lines in the Argonne Forest in October 1918 France during the closing weeks of World War I. So yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, trying to find any more information about the writer has been difficult. But okay, he served with the 1st Air Cavalry Division in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969, and he had written a sequel to Cliffhanger that was never produced. Oh my God! I'd love to read that. I might as well collect all of James Carabatsos' screenplays. I might as well do that and do commentaries on all of them. That'd be pretty cool. In March 1994, Variety magazine reported that Carabatsos had written a script for Morgan Creek Productions called Cairo, which was about a gusty New York street cop out to settle a score. So yeah, I mean, he's obviously written other screenplays that have been unproduced, but like I said, the three big ones are three Vietnam or post-Vietnam films: Heroes, Heartbreak Ridge, and Hamburger Hill. Now, this scene right here was the very first scene shot in the movie, and I know that because I have the shooting schedule. First day, Wednesday, March 9th, 1977, Transbay Terminal 1st and Mission Street, San Francisco. Scenes 36 through 39, Transbay Terminal, San Francisco. And scene 40, Zach buys tickets at Ticket Window, New York. Atmosphere, 36 pedestrians and 2 nuns. Currency, piece of paper, sign of bus company, and luggage. Among the vehicles, livestock and props. Carol's tote bag, clothes, portable hair blower, apples, salami and sweater, packages, and 245 cal pistols. So yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to actually get my hands on the shooting schedule. This is fascinating. Really fascinating. Oh, wow. Carabatsos also wrote the Heroes paperback novelization. Oh, hey, John, could you get me that for Christmas? I would appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, find me a copy for Christmas, or you have one down in the basement. Well, see, John, you saw this in 1977, did you not? Or did you see it on television when it premiered in September of '78? Because, like I said, this was a big hit in the theaters. It made $33 million. I mean, on a $3.5 million budget, that's astounding. And here again, the star power I think is evident here. But yeah, because like I said, I mean, now we have Sally Field come into the picture. Now I have never seen Gidget. Okay, I've never seen Gidget or the. I've never, so I don't know the Sally Field from the 1960s that everybody else seems to know. But let's see. Yeah, I've never seen any episode of Gidget or The Flying Nun or Alias Smith and Jones, or, she also did Night Gallery and Sybil and Carol Burnett and Company during the 1970s. So I never experienced her when, at this time when she was just breaking out into movies. And of course, at the end of the decade, she won her first Academy Award for Norma Ray, the very famous Union movie. See, there's the sausage. That's great. That's great. So Carabatsos basically throws together these two characters. In the script, it's his name is Zach, but in the movie, his name is Jack. So Jack Dunn and this lady, they get together, very much in the style of It Happened One Night. Not exactly the same movie, but look, I mean, there is obvious inspiration here. I saw it immediately. In fact, the reason why how I discovered Heroes was that it premiered on DVD. I think around 2009, something like that. But It Happened One Night is very much embedded in this movie. And for those of you who don't remember, It Happened One Night was the very first film to win all 5 major Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Actor Clark Gable, Best Actress Claudette Colbert, and Best Screenplay and Best Director Frank Capra. And it's like I said, it's about an heiress who basically basically escapes from the clutches of her father so she can marry the man she loves, who is this pompous, wealthy bastard named Prince. They call him Prince. Let's just put it that way. And so she ends up on the bus to New York and meeting this reporter played by Clark Gable, who she eventually falls in love with. And like I said, it's a legendary romantic comedy. It's like it basically wrote all the rules in the book for subsequent romantic comedies, the one, the only, and the original. But and I was thinking, oh, James Carabatsos must have used It Happened One Night as a template to study for Heroes, and that's what I alluded to in my original review of the film, which I'm actually going to quote here in a minute. As we make our way out of New York City, and this is very much a cross-country movie. This is very much a cross-country journey of in so many ways, and it's very effective in so many ways. I mean, it's quite a journey. Let me bring up this review, because this was really my first initial reaction to the movie. I have to actually dig for it. It's amazing. Here it is. Uh, Notice Sally Field is studying Henry Winkler's movements and actions all throughout these scenes right here. And I like this actor who plays the bus driver. Yeah, his name is Val Avery. The actor's name is Val Avery, and he was a character actor who appeared in hundreds of movies and TV shows in a career that spanned 50 years and appeared in over 100 films and appearances in over 300 television specials. Wow. He started out in the 1950s with movies like The Harder They Fall and Edge of the City. He was in The Magnificent Seven as Henry. We're talking about the bus driver, yeah. Requiem for a Heavyweight. He was in HUD, Sylvia, The Hallelujah Trail, Wild Wild Winter, Nevada Smith, Ombre, Faces, No Way to Treat a Lady. Oh, yeah, and speaking of Faces, now, I didn't mention it before. I think I was too busy reading the script, but John Cassavetes had a walk-on scene earlier. He was a big director, a very big indie director back in the 70s, but he plays a doctor where he just walks through a hallway. And literally, it happened so quickly. And I kind of did a double take the first time I saw it. That wait a minute, what is John Cassavetes doing in this movie? It's like he was just visiting one day and they decide, hey, can we just film you just walking down this hallway and just saying a few things? Well, I guess so. Did you notice in the hospital scene earlier on, John walks by the doctor's smack? What? Exactly. That's what I was saying. No lines. Maybe his part was cut. I thought he did have dialogue. See, that's the thing. It happens so quickly, and it's out of nowhere. Like, what the hell? But yeah, you can go back. He's in the hospital sequence and he's wearing the smocks, the doctor's smock. Here again, why? I don't know. Maybe he just like I said, he must have been just available and close by. I mean, it's the only thing I can imagine. I mean, he might have been visiting somebody on the set. You know, who knows? But yeah, here we have Henry Winkler and Sally Field now on the same bus traveling cross country. And let's see. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this passenger right here who is apparently going across country to take this job as a weatherman has this this dummy, which Winkler uses for. See, there's the thing about this movie, and I know John has kind of a small issue with it, I guess, with the comedy or how it tries to be a comedy at times. I mean, I think it's just I think that James Carabatsos wanted to be light in some scenes more than others. I mean, here again, this is a movie about a man who is, damaged and traumatized and everything, and he's, very, very eccentric and but at the same time, I can imagine, him doing this just because it makes him keep on going. It makes him tolerate life a little bit more by causing some kind of mischief. Hey, buddy, you're in the aisle. Sit your ass down. And actually, there are seats that he can now sit down in, and yet he still chooses to stand in the aisle. After all that overbooking, right? Okay, so July 31st of 2008, that's when I received the DVD of Heroes from Universal Pictures to review. In 1974, America was introduced to the one and only Henry Winkler. Although he started out in movies like Crazy Joe and The Lords of Flatbush, it was the role de Fonz on Happy Days that made him a poster-cum magazine cover phenomenon. Seriously, nobody really cared if he could act. They just worshipped him in a leather jacket as he represented the new form of boob tube cool. I was a lot younger than when I wrote this, just throwing that out there. 3 years into Happy Days fever, Winkler made its starring debut in a serio comic drama about a screwed-up Vietnam veteran. The role must have been a real challenge for him, as he no doubt wanted to prove to his harshest critics he can be taken seriously as an actor. The choice paid off handsomely, with a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor. Over 30 years later, Universal gives the little film Heroes a long-awaited DVD release. Before 1978's The Deer Hunter and Coming Home, few films were about Vietnam or even dared allude to it. A rare exception was the Oscar-winning documentary Hearts and Minds, which emphasized how much the U.S. was, quote, the wrong side. With the country deeply and emotionally divided, it wasn't exactly the right subject to drive a feature film. Most people wanted to be entertained, not reminded of the outside world. In the summer of '77, Star Wars would be the perfect cinematic antidote for the post-Vietnam Depression. On the other hand, it also opened the door somewhat sneakily for films about Vietnam to be accepted, if not yet embraced. Screenwriter James Carabatsos is a veteran of Vietnam. While he's more well known for writing two 80s war epics, Heartbreak Ridge and Hamburger Hill, he started out with 1977's Heroes, in which he wanted to emphasize some of the problems many of his fellow veterans were going through after the war had ended. To be sure, Heroes is no the best years of our lives, as it seems more like a clone of It Happened One Night, with Winkler as Gable and Field as Colbert. Not quite, but the ride is smooth, entertaining, agreeably acted, and hard to dislike. Jeremy Paul Kagan's direction is appropriately low-key, maintaining focus on Carabatsos' characters from beginning to end. As a character, Dunn is like many veterans who became outcasts in the American landscape. He's a Nixon kid who's been nuked of all his self-worth, now seeking harmony and hoping to harvest worms for a living. Consequently, his buddy Ken, played by Harrison Ford, who is coming up here very, very soon, hasn't exactly found his niche or direction either, expecting his eureka to come not from discovery, but from luck. They're heroes and they are lost, lacking the respect and honor they deserve. Carol, who is not ready for marriage, actually views Jack and Ken as human beings, no matter how eccentric they may be. Henry Winkler gets Jack's eccentricity down to a T, and he okay. Okay, now here's the important point right here. Being a minor catalog title, it's unsurprising that Universal is releasing Heroes as a bare-bones disc. However, this is a sorry bare-bones disc, seeing how it doesn't even have scene selections. The only choices on the menu are play movie or languages. Visually, the 1.85 anamorphic print is better than expected, with colors well saturated and sharpness spare. The studio supplies 2 audio tracks. Subtitles are provided in English only. In addition, Universal has some explaining to do regarding the soundtrack. When Heroes made its theatrical run, it included a Kansas song, Carry On Wayward Son, accompanying the end credits. On VHS, that song was removed and replaced by a less substantial tune that alluded to the film's title less. Fans who've been hoping the DVD would correct this error would be rightfully disappointed, as the Kansas song is nowhere to be found, despite the fact it's still mentioned in the end credits. Remember, this is the first time I've watched it. So when I watched it, that song was not at the end of the movie. The difference is night and day. It's just absolutely night and day. Not having any extras is one thing, but this mistake borders on incompetence. When it originally came out, Heroes largely served as a vehicle for Henry Winkler, who ruled the 70s. Field and Ford were just beginning to make their marks and was essentially ruled in the 1980s, with her winning 2 Oscars and him owning the box office as Indiana Jones. In that sense, despite its low profile, Heroes remains a confident curio, an appealing amalgam of road movie, drama, and character study, which somehow works 30 years later. The film is free to go, with Winkler and company found not guilty. So yeah, that was my original review that I wrote of Heroes when it came out on DVD in when was that again? 2018. Yeah. Or 2008. Excuse me, 2008. Oh man, it's late. I'm sorry. But anyway, so yeah, here we are, and Jack just had a nightmare, PTSD nightmare, which Field managed to wake him up from. Here again, I mean, this all reminded me of Best Years of Our Lives too. When Dana Andrews is woken up by Teresa Wright when he's going through his nightmares. And I like how natural Winkler and Field seem to be in a lot of these scenes. I don't know how well they got together during the making of the movie. I hope they did get along well, but Interestingly enough, the actress who was originally offered the role was Talia Shire from the Rocky movies. She played Mrs. Balboa, of course. She was supposed to be in this role, and then she decided to pass on it, and Sally Field took the role, and this, of course, was right after Smokey and the Bandit with Burt Reynolds. And she actually made her film debut in 1962 with Moon Pilot. Then she was in The Way West, and then she was in Stay Hungry, directed by Bob Rafelson in 1976, which she co-starred with Jeff Bridges and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Can you imagine how Sally Field felt acting next to these two guys? It's just, I can only imagine. I need to see Stay Hungry at one point. I really do need to see Stay Hungry. But after Heroes and Smokey and the Bandit, she was in The End, which was directed by Burt. And then Hooper, which here again starred Burt. and she actually, her and Burt were actually, I think, an item for a little bit of time. I don't think too long, because I know he was married to, I don't remember her name at the moment, but yeah, I think they were an item at one point of time. But then in 1980, she made Smokey and the Bandit 2 with Burt Reynolds, and I think that was their very last collaboration together. But that's when she started to branch out and do more serious fare, including Absence of Malice, Places in the Heart, where she won her second Academy Award for Best Actress, Murphy's Romance, Steel Magnolias, Not Without My Daughter, Soap Dish, Homeward Bound 2, Lost in San Francisco, Forrest Gump. She played Forrest Gump's mother. And her newest film is actually coming out in 2023. Get this, guys. Be prepared. Strap yourselves down. Because in February of 2023, courtesy of Paramount Pictures, we are going to be getting a movie called 80 for Brady. It stars Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, Rita Moreno, Sally Field, and Tom Brady as himself. And it's a fictional account of 4 senior friends who take a road trip to Houston to watch their hero Tom Brady and the New England Patriots play in Super Bowl LI. For anybody in the chat who just listened to that, would you pay a ticket to go see that? I'd love to know. I'd really love to know. One more time, 80 for Brady stars Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, Rita Moreno, Sally Field, and Tom Brady. And it's a fictional account of 4 senior friends who take a road trip to Houston to watch their hero, Tom Brady, and the New England Patriots play in the Super Bowl. We'll see. We'll see. Would not pay. Look, I love these ladies, but no. Yeah, Rob Gasper's like, nope. Nope. And of course, the bus driver hates him so much now. He's like, no, I'll just keep these. You're not going to get any of those. So now I think most modern day audiences, though, know Sally Field now from playing Aunt May Parker in the 2 Spider-Man movies that had Andrew Garfield in them, which I didn't mind the first of those 2 movies. The second one I walked out on. But rest assured, it wasn't because of Sally Field. As a matter of fact, I mean, I will confess that for the same website, DVD Verdict, that I wrote that review for Heroes for, I actually did the 3rd season of Brothers and Sisters, which was a show that Sally Field did about 20 years ago, I think, at this point now. Yeah, 2006. Yeah, it centered on a family and their lives in LA and Pasadena where they had like a winery and everything. But Sally Field was essentially the lead of the show. And yeah, I think it had Callista Flockhart and Rob Lowe, Emily Van Camp, and Rachel Griffiths. Which, look, based on that cast, I was willing to watch it. But like I said, it was just a family drama. But Sally Field, hey, she got a lot of love for that role. And I mean, she's like a beloved actress in Hollywood now. She really is. I mean, she is, of course, treated virtually as royalty now. And I mean, I like enough of her films and I like enough of her performances, although, I mean, like, okay, let's put it this way. I agree that she deserved the Oscar for Norma Ray. I just don't like the movie Norma Ray. I don't. I think after watching it once, I was like, yeah, I don't need to watch this again. I mean, Sally Field's great. She's great in it, but it's not a movie I'm willing to return to. Same thing with Murphy's Romance, which I remember my mother especially loving because she had a thing for James Garner. But it's but yeah. But no, I mean, Heroes, I'll be watching every Veterans Day. So, hey, I mean, I'll be seeing Sally Field every Veterans Day. How about that? And I probably should watch Smokey and the Bandit more, even though in the words of Leonard Maltin, it's about as subtle as the Three Stooges, but it's a classic compared to all the films that followed in its wake that were trying to duplicate its success. And he's absolutely right about that. I have to be in a certain mood for Smokey and the Bandit. I mean, but look, I mean, Field is cute as a button in that film as well as this one, and I think this one she was able to flex her acting chops a little bit more on screen rather than just be the love interest in Smokey and the Bandit. Yeah, I'm not big on Norma Ray or Murphy's Romance. I mean, look, they have their fans. I know there are people that love those movies and they love Sally Field in those movies. I mean, like I said, the truth of the matter is there's just not many films in her resume where I choose to return to. Um, I like the end and Hooper. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, ironically enough, some of her best work is with Burt Reynolds. you know, would I rather watch Hooper than Places in the Heart? Yeah, I would have to say yes. I would. Oh no! And of course, disaster in the cafe, and it's going to lead for financial disaster for Sally Field here. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I do like Sally Field as an actress, and I like her work more often than not. It just, she's also one of those actresses that has a resume that there's only a handful of films that I would return to. Hell, I think I'd rather watch the Homeward Bound movies more than most of her other films. Because she voices a cat named Sassy in that. It's a remake of the 1963 Disney film. And I mean, whenever I think of Sally Field, I always hear Sassy, the cat, in my head. So, but she's wonderful here. I mean, she, like I said, super cute, and she's really likable, and you can see how she starts to really genuinely care about Henry Winkler and his predicament. And it's a romance that bubbles very, very nicely, I think, from the moment they meet to the end of the film. Yeah, that was a clever thing on Jeremy Kagan's part to watch the bus go by, and then you see this little bucket, and they're like, "Oh, he was hiding in the bucket." Okay. He wrote it Eureka on there with her nail polish. It's great. That's great. Mm. She cannot deny that he brought some spark into her life, that he made her happy and made her smile when her husband, or no, her soon-to-be husband, because she basically runs from New York right before her wedding day. And she's, on a journey herself, in terms of self-discovery. Like, is this really what I want, or do I want to, get out of here and do something different? But here again, I mean, lovingly reminiscent of It Happened One Night. Really is. Flying Nun. Okay, so why don't we talk about the director now? Because we still have a few more minutes before Harrison Ford comes on screen here. But we're getting to him. We're getting to him. The director, Jeremy Kagan, he was born in 1945. And he has a very interesting resume. I mean, when I went over this earlier, I was like, wow, this is interesting. So he was born in New York, got a BA from Harvard in 67. He went on to attend the newly formed New York University Graduate Institute of Film and Television, was the first class of the AFI Conservatory. His feature film credits include Heroes, The Big Fix with Richard Dreyfuss, a political comedy thriller starring, The Chosen from the classic book of the same name by Chaim Potok, The Journey of Natty Gann, which is a Disney movie that I grew up quite a bit with, starring Meredith Salinger as a street urchin during the Great Depression. And her father leaves to go to Washington State to get a job. And so she has to travel cross country. Here again, another cross country movie. I think he had a little bit of a thing for that genre. But it's a very, very, very good movie with a very moving performance by Jed, who also played the dog/wolf hybrid in The Thing. For all those of you who are horror fans out there who love The Thing, check out Journey of Natty Gann, and also check out White Fang. Those are the other two movies that Jed made during his lifetime and working in Hollywood. Highly recommend those. But yeah, Jeremy Kagan did a Journey of Natty Gann, which was actually the first American movie ever to win the gold prize at the Moscow International Film Festival. He also directed the underground comedy Big Man on Campus. Now, here's where we have to take a pause. Jeremy Kagan directed this movie called Big Man on Campus. And if it sounds like a typical college comedy, no. It's actually loosely based on Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it opens with a news broadcast on the apparent sighting of a quote, mysterious creature on the UCLA campus. This is basically a very loose adaptation of Big Man on Campus. But on top of all this, it came out in 1989. It has Corey Parker, Cindy Williams from American Graffiti, Melora Hardin, Jessica Harper, and Tom Skerritt. And it actually got some decent reviews, believe it or not. It was also called The Hunchback of UCLA, even though it was filmed at the other college across from UCLA. And he also directed the cult classic fencing film By the Sword, 1991, and the hybrid film Golda's Balcony from the hit play of the same name. His feature Shot was about what one bullet does to many lives. He has also been a prolific television director, starting already in 1972 at the age of 26. So he was 31 when he directed Heroes in 1977. Mm-hmm. Or 76, actually. I got the shooting schedule, like I said. So he was about 30 years old when he directed this. But in 72, he directed The Most Crucial Game, an episode in the second Columbo season. In 1996, Kagan won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Directing for a drama series for the Chicago Hope episode, Leave of Absence. Other credits include the television movie Catherine, The Making of an American Revolutionary, which also had Henry Winkler in it, by the way. That was a television movie that came out in 75, right before Heroes. And he also did Conspiracy, the Trial of the Chicago Eight, for which he won the Cable Ace Award for Best Dramatic Special. Kagan also directed Roswell, the UFO Conspiracy, which garnered a Golden Globe Award nomination. Other TV films include The Ballad of Lucy Whipple, The Courage with Sophia Loren, Scott Joplin, Descending Angel for HBO, and Showtime's Color of Justice, Bobby's Girl and Crown Heights about the riots in 1991, and which won the Humanitas Award in 2004 for affirming the dignity of every person. The film also received an NAACP Image Award and the Directors Guild nomination for Best Family Film. He also directed a movie episode of Steven Spielberg's Emmy-winning Taken. He has worked on several other series, include The West Wing, Guardian, Resurrection Boulevard, Picket Fences, Boomtown, and more. He produced and directed the 10-part miniseries The ACLU Freedom Files in 2006 and 2007, which received a number of awards and was shown on Link TV, Court TV, and PBS. And he's also made a number of short documentaries and advocacy dramatic films of NGOs, including the Doe Fund, which works with the homeless and formerly incarcerated, and the Democracy School, a movement developing local governance, and Pioneers, which advances achievements in environmental and social justice. Jeremy Kagan is a full tenured professor at the University of Southern California, where he teaches the graduate courses in directing and has recently created the Center for Change-Making Media, which is a hub for research and training in advocacy cinematic genres. His production company, Ace Transformative Media, has made numerous shorts, including 3 for Vaccinate LA. He's also served as artistic director of the Robert Redford Sundance Institute and is a national board member of the Directors Guild of America and chairperson of its Special Projects Committee, which provides cultural and educational programs for 19,000 members. In 2004, he was honored with the Robert Aldrich Award for extraordinary service to the Guild. Wow. In his capacity with the DGA, Kagan also moderates the group's annual roundtable discussion featuring that year's 5 nominees for Outstanding Director Feature Film. Kagan is also the author of 3 books, Directors, Close-Up, and Living E-Textbook Keys to Directing. And yep, that's Jeremy Kagan. So I'll always remember Jeremy Kagan for directing Heroes and Journey of Natty Gann, which actually those films could make a cool little double feature on their own. But ladies and gentlemen, here is Harrison Ford. Yes, young, fresh Harrison Ford. Right after Star Wars, like I said, Star Wars came out in May of 1977, and Heroes came about approximately 6 months later. And pretty much the only other person in Henry Winkler's platoon that we get to meet during this journey. So Harrison Ford, he pretty much just officially retired from films. I think he said that Indiana Jones 5 was seriously going to be it, and he was done. From what I understand, he is now officially retired from films. I mean, I know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that without double checking about there being an announcement. But everything I read seemed to indicate that Indiana Jones 5 is the last one, which is amazing. So, but it's just extraordinary seeing him in a very early role. And he's not, I mean, here again, he's not the star. He's only in it for 20 minutes of screen time. But boy, does he make the most of that 20 minutes. Well, here's what happened, because, well, he was a Boy Scout. He achieved the second highest rank of Life Scout, and he worked at Napoleon Adventure-Based Scout Camp as a counselor for the Reptile Study Merit Badge. Because of this, he and director Steven Spielberg later decided to depict the young Indiana Jones as a Life Scout in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But in 1964, that's when his career really took off, because he did a season of summer stock at the Belfry Players in Wisconsin, and then he traveled to LA to apply for a job in radio voiceovers. He didn't get it, but he stayed in California and eventually signed a $150 per week contract with Columbia Pictures' New Talent program, playing bit roles in films. His first known role was an uncredited role as the bellhop in Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round from 1966. And you've probably seen that clip somewhere, even if you've never seen the whole film. But the whole film is actually not that bad. There is little record of his non-speaking or extra roles in film. Ford was at the bottom of the hiring list, having offended producer Jerry Tarkovsky after he played a bellboy in the feature. He was told by Tarkovsky that when actor Tony Curtis delivered a bag of groceries, he did it like a movie star. Ford felt his job was to act like a bellboy. And he also did Love, 1967. There was a movie he did in 1970 for Antonioni called Zabriskie Point, which is actually a very interesting film, although you can barely see Harrison Ford in it. Seriously. And here again, because of American Graffiti, he wasn't happy with the roles offered to him, so he became a self-taught professional carpenter to support his then wife and 2 young sons. Clients at this time included the writers Joan Didion and John Gregory Dunn, who lived on the beach at Malibu. Ford appears in the documentary Joan Didion, The Center Will Not Hold. He and his wife became friends of the writers. And casting director and fledgling producer Fred Roos championed the young Ford and secured him an audition with George Lucas for the role of Bob Falfa, which Ford went on to play in American Graffiti. Ford's relationship with Lucas profoundly affected his career later. After director Francis Ford Coppola's film The Godfather was a success, he hired Ford to expand his office and gave him small roles in his next 2 films, The Conversation and Apocalypse Now. In the latter film, Ford played an army officer named G. Lucas. But in this movie, his character name is Ken Boyd. And here again, he is a fellow veteran of Jack Dunn's platoon. And he was hoping that the rabbits, I mean, I don't know why George and Lenny just popped in my head, because these characters really have no connection to them. But whenever I think of rabbits, I think of either Mice and Men or Night of the Lepus, which I did a commentary on a few weeks ago. But anyway, so, but I mean, the rabbits combined with the worms, so they can have this very this worm farm, which seems like more like a fantasy more than anything else. Although it's, I mean, look, I mean, I lived off the grid for 3 years in the mountains of California, because I had to get out of society for a while after I got out of the military. And, the thing is that I can completely understand Jack's desire to be, here again, by himself, doing a job that he likes, where he doesn't have to deal with, a lot of people, that he can be, just by himself and everything. I completely identify with that. And, like I said, I did travel cross country several times by car and everything. And so, just these experiences just rang true for me. They really did. I mean, that's the thing. It was only up until like 4 years ago when I was willing to appear on camera for the first time on YouTube. But anyway, so Harrison Ford is, here again, you can see how these guys were both damaged after the war, and they kind of lead these mundane existences where they just want to, be by themselves, not be distracted, not be bothered, and Harrison Ford loves to race. That's his thing. But I mean, of course, a lot of us are thinking, well, okay, how long can you really try to do that? I mean, you're going to have to quit racing eventually. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't live on the rabbits at that point. They don't mention anything about benefits or anything. I'm assuming also that these guys get a check from the government every month. But so here we go. So yeah, Harrison Ford's character in this movie happens to have a stolen M16 rifle in the trunk of his car. as you can see right here. And he wants to do a little shooting. Why not? I mean, sure, after you've had a few beers, yeah, why not? Let's get out the M16 and do some shooting. Why not? I got to confess that while I was trained in a few weapons, I was never comfortable wearing them. It wasn't even that I was not comfortable handling the gun. I wasn't comfortable just wearing them. You know what I'm saying? I preferred to not have a weapon near me if I could help it. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of carrying around guns in the military. I just wasn't. I mean, luckily, the only times I had to wear weapons were during shore patrol and when I stood watch on the quarterdeck of the ship. But pick out a star, just any star. Oh, God. I'm sure this is on the props, all these bullets and everything. I'm pretty sure they're all on here. So just to do a timestamp real quick, we are 56 minutes in, 56 minutes and right about 30 seconds, 56:30. And they're going to be racing the next day. Hopefully then Sally Field will get her money that she had to pay for all the damage done to the cafe earlier. Now, the music for this movie, of course, the song by Kansas, we will talk about that later, obviously. But the music was done by Jack Nitzsche, who was a songwriter, composer, and record producer. First came to prominence in the early 60s as the right-hand man of producer Phil Spector, and went on to work with the Rolling Stones and Neil Young, among others. He also worked extensively on film scores, notably for films such as Performance, The Exorcist, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and in 1983, he won the Academy Award for Best Original Song for co-writing Up Where We Belong with Buffy St. Marie. Just go piss on a wall, all right? But yeah, so Officer and Gentleman is one of my absolute favorites. But he also composed the score for John Carpenter's Starman, which I'm also a huge fan of. Although I gotta say the score, it's kind of on the level of a TV movie score, which, that's the thing. This whole movie kind of, if there's one negative aspect, if there's one criticism that I have to lobby towards Heroes, is that it does kind of have a television movie feel, sort of like a glorified theatrical release for a television movie. But at the same time, I've seen it a few times now, and just the way it plays up until the end, because it's actually longer than most television films, particularly at this time, and considering how complex these relationships get, the thing is, I think it's worthy of the theatrical release. Whatever you might think of the quality of the filmmaking, which I think is really good, it doesn't come off like, it doesn't showcase the cheapness of a television movie. But at the same time, maybe it's just the fact that Henry Winkler was literally the TV star at the time. It kind of gives it an unfortunate assumption that this plays like a TV movie, but I don't think so. I think it actually was more than worthy of a theatrical release. I might have to pause to get another coconut water from the fridge, so bear with me here. But I really like this little race car intermission in the middle of the movie here. And this was after, this was after we had a few race car movies like Grand Prix, which won 4 Academy Awards, and Le Mans with Steve McQueen, and then of course The Love Bug, which came out in 1969 and was the second highest grossing film of the year. Yeah, that's my favorite race car movie. I don't care what anybody says. It's not the Dale Earnhardt story, that's for sure. Hello, my name is Doris is a recent good one. Oh. Or told Winkler he just made a space movie with lots of blue screen and was wondering how it would turn out. I saw there is a picture that's circulating online which shows Harrison Ford and Henry Winkler together again after like 40, 45 years. And, they just got their arms around each other and they're all happy and everything. They've remained friends ever since they made this movie. I think that's awesome. Of course, if you follow Henry Winkler on Twitter, which I do, he likes to showcase all his fishing trips. He always takes pictures of the fishes that he's caught and everything, and just it's like that's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to do in his retirement. Is just fish, and that's. Hey, I don't blame him. So the thing is that's why I love the fact that he wants to start a worm farm in this movie, because it's like then he could fish off of all the worms. I wonder if Jack Dunn knows how to fish, though. I do wonder if he does know. But knowing Henry Winkler and what he likes to tweet about now, I think it fits. I just think it really does fit. Pauline Kael never officially reviewed Heroes, but she mentioned it favorably in her review of Witness, writing Ford is yet to top his haunted, hollowed out performance as a Vietnam vet. Wow, that is high praise indeed. I agree with her. I completely agree with her. Like I said, despite the limited screen time, he makes an impression. He makes a mark here. I love that. He just smashes the can in his head and everything. Now, I also love, all those documentaries and bonus features where, all his co-stars talk about him. Like, on the American Graffiti documentary, they were talking about how he and Bo Hopkins and Paul Lamont were like the bad boys of they were being very naughty and, causing all these issues at the motel they were staying at. And it's just, they were partying a lot, Like I said, they basically pushed Richard Dreyfuss in the pool without warning him. Harrison Ford. Poor guy. Let's see here. You know what? I don't think Roger Ebert reviewed Heroes either. I don't think he did. Rotten Tomatoes has a 29% score. That's ridiculously low. I have no idea why the Rotten Tomatoes score is that low, because this movie is seriously not that bad. In fact, I would say it's just the opposite, more than the opposite. But I mean, among the shall we say reviews for the movie, there's only 28 at IMDb. Oh, here are the shots of the rabbits. Here we go. Yeah. 9 out of 10. A strong, simple story. 8 out of 10. Winkler can act. 8 out of 10. Good movie. See and hear the original, not the TV version. Yes. Can it really be 30 years later? Yes. Harrison Ford's range. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. End song, 10 out of 10. Movie with a gripping story, 10 out of 10. Equal parts poignant and funny, 8 out of 10. Wow, I love this movie. They filmed a big scene near my house. Oh, let me read this now. Okay. This is the scene where they're staying at the motel. Okay, that's coming up. That's coming up here. And from what I recall, a car crashes into the hotel. Haven't seen the movie again in years, so it's all a bit foggy. Anyway, I was 14 years old then, and it was a huge event that this movie was being filmed in Sylmar, California. The Fonz was in our neighborhood. Tons of kids went to see him and meet him. He was totally into it and friendly to everyone. Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, every story I've heard, everything I've read, Henry Winkler is seriously one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. From what I understand, is one of the sweetest, nicest guys that you would ever expect to meet. I mean, not really anything like Fonz, of course. I mean, you know, but like I said, I mean, I will always remember him and love him from 3 films. Because in addition to Heroes, my favorite comedy of all time, Night Shift. There he is with the super young Michael Keaton and Shelley Long with all the prostitutes in the city morgue vehicle. But he also executive produced one of my all-time favorite romantic comedies, The Sure Thing, starring John Cusack, Daphne Zuniga, Vivica Linfors, and Nicolette Sheridan. Yeah, and I've always loved that quote. This film gets my unapologetic nomination for greatest film ever made. Look, I know that when it comes to John Cusack in 1985, he was in Journey of Natty Gann, directed by Jeremy Kagan. Hey! No, yeah, he was. In 1985, John Cusack was in 3 films. Rob Reiner's The Sure Thing, Jeremy Kagan's The Journey of Natty Gann, and Better Off Dead. And Better Off Dead seems to be the biggest film of them all when it comes to which of the 3 people remember. But The Sure Thing, heavily reminiscent of It Happened One Night. In fact, it's pretty much It Happened One Night with college kids. So we are now in Oklahoma. Oh, meanwhile, quietly sitting in her director chair was Sally Field. I loved her as the Flying Nun. And I wanted to talk to her, but I just didn't get an approachable vibe from her. I just kept staring at her. Oh, no. I wish I had. Maybe we could have had a nice time visiting while everyone went crazy for Henry Winkler, who, by the way, was super short. I got to go rent this movie again. It's super short. Okay. Yeah, so most of the reviews at IMDb are actually very, very good. I mean, the audience, for the most part, likes the movie, if not loves the movie. Let's see. Well, Vincent Canby did not like Heroes either. He called it it's excruciatingly obvious film. I don't know about that, but yeah, some of the professional critics were just kind of harsh on it. Huh. Richard Winters didn't like it either. Oh, man. I mean, there are some Blu-ray reviews here. Yeah, there are some Blu-ray reviews here that are a little bit more positive. But yeah, I mean, it got a very mixed reaction at the time, and I think it kind of has a very mixed reaction today as well. But you know, here again, I admit I got a veteran bias, so that's part of the reason why I fell in love with this movie the way I did. Okay, now one of the bar patrons in this movie, I'm not 100% sure where he is. in the scene. But supposedly in this scene, as a bar patron, is a cast member by the name of David Ellis. And yes, he is actually credited in the cast list, but he is known to horror fans as David R. Ellis, who directed several films later on in his life, including he did stunts. He did stunts for a lot of movies like Sliver and Warlock, The Armageddon, and Body of Evidence. But he also became a director of films such as Homeward Bound 2, Lost in San Francisco, Final Destination 2, Cellular, Snakes on a Plane, Asylum 2008, the fourth Final Destination movie, and a 2011 film called Shark Night. Yeah. So director David R. Ellis did a bit in this film. He only was in 11 films as an actor. He was also in The Strongest Man in the World, which is the third and final Kurt Russell Disney movie that he made in the 50s. He also did an episode of Wonder Woman, Boardwalk, 1979, Rocky III. He was in that, The Mighty Quinn, Blind Fury, and The Bounty Hunter, 1989. But he also did uncredited stunts for Smokey and the Bandit, which of course had Sally Field also. Bound for Glory, the Hal Ashby movie. Death Sport, Game of Death, Hooper, okay. And Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Airplane 2, the sequel. Looking to Get Out. Oh, God, that Hal Ashby movie. But yeah, he directed a couple Final Destination movies. So that's when I think of David R. Ellis, that's what I think of. I think of the two Final Destination movies he directed. And the last movie he worked on was Get Him to the Greek. But he also did stunts for like Hotel for Dogs, Harriet the Spy, Forever Young, Patriot Games, Cuffs, The Addams Family, Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken, and Life Stinks, and Misery, and The Freshman. Oh yeah, all sorts of things. But sadly, he passed away at the age of 60 years old in 2013. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I have difficulty identifying him because a lot of the pictures that are out there of him are him much, much older. I tried to get a picture of him in Heroes, so I wasn't able to fully identify him, and I do apologize. I actually recognized the John Cassavetes, but I didn't recognize David R. Ellis. I am so sorry. Couple little directors and a couple little bit parts here. Give me 30 seconds. I will be right back. Thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, Sally and Henry are going to get a little bit more close here. All right. Now, I did have something that I wanted to share with you. I mean, like I said, this film was a hit, $33 million at the box office. So I'm assuming that it struck a chord with a lot of families of Vietnam veterans and, of course, veterans themselves. Well, I think it's important now that we're building up towards the finale here we're at 1 hour, 15 minutes, 1 hour and 15 minutes into Jeremy Kagan's Heroes. And I want to read something from the Institute for Research in Neuroscience and Neuropsychiatry, from these two MDs in France. The term post-traumatic stress disorder has become a household name since its first appearance in 1980 in the third edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, published by the American Psychiatric Association. In the collective mind, this diagnosis is associated with the legacy of the Vietnam War disaster. Earlier conflicts had given birth to terms such as soldier's heart, shell shock, and war neurosis. The latter diagnosis was equivalent to the névrose de guerre and Kriegsneurose of French and German scientific literature. This article describes how the immediate and chronic consequences of psychological trauma made their way into medical literature and how concepts of diagnosis and treatment evolved over time. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I still wanted to give a little bit of this, just to give some kind of background. Mankind's earliest literature tells us that a significant proportion of military casualties are psychological, and that witnessing death can leave chronic psychological symptoms. As we are reminded in Deuteronomy 21-9, military leaders have long been aware that many soldiers must be removed from the front line because of nervous breakdown, which is often contagious. Mankind's first major epic, The Tale of Gilgamesh, gives us explicit descriptions of both love and post-traumatic symptoms, suggesting that the latter are also part of human fundamental experience. After Gilgamesh loses his friend Enkidu, he experiences symptoms of grief, as one may expect, but after this phase of mourning, he races from place to place in panic, realizing that he too must die. The confrontation with death changed his personality. The first case of chronic mental symptoms caused by sudden fright in the battlefield is reported in the account of Battle of Marathon by Herodotus, written in 440 BC. Jean Froissart was the first representative chronicler of the 100 Years' War between England and France. He sojourned in 1388 and at the court of Gaston Phoebus and narrated the case of the Comte's brother who could not sleep near his wife and children because of his habit of getting up at night and seizing a sword to fight Oneiric enemies. The fact that soldiers are awakened by frightening dreams in which they re-experience past battles is a common theme in classical literature, as for instance Mercutio's account of Queen Mab in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. The Industrial Revolution and the introduction of steam-driven machinery were to give rise to the first civilian man-made disasters and cases of PTSD outside the battlefield. The public's imagination was struck by the first spectacular railway disasters, and physicians at the time were puzzled by the psychological symptoms displayed by survivors. Very soon, a controversy pitted the proponents of the organic theory, according to which the mental symptoms were caused by microscopic lesions of the spine or the brain, hence the names railway spine and railway brain, against those who held that emotional shock was the essential cause and that the symptoms were hysterical in nature. This controversy was to last until World War I. It seems that the first mention of the term traumatic neurosis dates from that time. It was the title given in 1884 by the German physician Hermann Oppenheim to his book containing a description of 42 cases caused by a railway or workplace accidents. This new diagnosis was vehemently criticized by Charcot, who maintained that these cases were only forms of hysteria, neuroasthenia, or hysterio-neurasthenia. After Charcot's death in 1893, the term traumatic neurosis made its way into French language psychiatry. Witness the Belgian psychiatrist Jean Croc, who in 1896 reported 28 cases caused by railway accidents. It is at a time of Charcot's famous Tuesday's lectures that Janet and Freud discovered traumatic hysteria with all its correlates, the disassociation caused by trauma, the pathogenic role of forgotten memories, and cathartic treatment. This was a first glimpse of what would be later known as the unconscious. And the mental distress of World War I soldiers was repeatedly described in literary autobiographies by English, German, and French authors such as Robert Graves, Ernst Junger, or Henry Barbusse. Linger wrote, "The state takes away our responsibility but cannot ease our grief. We have to carry it alone, and it reaches deep within our dreams." Shell shock. Psychiatric casualties were reported very early in the war in numbers that no one had anticipated. The French physician Millian reported 4 cases of battle hypnosis following military actions in 1914. The well-known German psychiatrist Robert Gopp reported in 1917, quote, "The big artillery battles of December of 1914 filled our hospitals with a large number of unscathed soldiers and officers presenting with mental disturbances. From then on, that number grew at a constantly increasing rate. At first, these soldiers were hospitalized with the others, but soon we had to open special psychiatric hospitals for them. Now, psychiatric patients make up by far the largest category in our armed forces. The main causes are the fright and anxiety brought about by the explosion of enemy shells and mines and seeing maimed or dead comrades. The resulting symptoms are states of sudden muteness, deafness, general tremor, inability to stand or walk, episodes of loss of consciousness, and convulsions." In his review of 88 cases of mental disorder in 1915, the French psychiatrist Regis had expressed a very similar opinion about the etiological role of witnessing the horrible death of comrades. 20% only presented with a physical wound, but in all cases, fright, emotional shock, and seeing maimed comrades had been a major factor. The clinical picture of war neurosis differed only slightly in the 2 world wars. Among the many treatment applied to stress disorders, one was much used during World War I and scarcely at all during World War II, the application of electrical current, also called Faradayization. This was probably because motor symptoms such as tremor, paralysis, contractions, limping, or fixed postures were common during World War I and rare in World War II. Faradayization was criticized in post-war Austria. A professor of psychiatry in Vienna was awarded a Nobel Prize in 1928, was even accused of excessive cruelty in the administration of his treatment, had to appear before an investigation committee in which Sigmund Furkud had the most enviable role of testifying as an expert. A most radical description of electrotherapy was published in 1916 by Fritz Kaufmann, in which he explained how war neurosis could be treated in one session only by combining suggestion, authority, and steadfast application of electricity until the symptoms subsided, a form of fight at outrance. A dreadful invention of World War II was the concept of total war, with the systematic targeting of civilian populations, as exemplified by the millions of deaths caused by the Holocaust, the air raids on cities to break the morale of civilian populations, and the atomic bombs dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Despite World War I, most armies were once again unprepared for a great number of psychiatric casualties, and psychiatrists were often viewed as a useless burden, as exemplified by a memorandum addressed by Winston Churchill to the Lord President of the Council in December 1942 in the following terms: "I am sure it would be sensible to restrict as much as possible the work of these gentlemen. It is very wrong to disturb large numbers of healthy, normal men and women by asking the same kind of odd questions in which psychiatrists specialize." American psychiatrists made a major contribution to the study of combat psychiatry during World War II. In Psychiatry in a Troubled World, William C. Menninger shows how the lessons of World War I seem to at first to have been entirely forgotten by the American military. During the initial battles in Africa, psychiatric casualties were sent back to base hospitals, often hundreds of miles from the front. Only 5% of these, were able to return to duty. In 1941, the first year of the war for the U.S., Abram Gardner, famous for having been analyzed by Freud himself, published a book based on his treatment of World War I veterans at the Veterans Hospital number 81 between 1922 and 1925. In the light of the experience with World War II soldiers, Gardner published a revised edition of his book at the end of the war. He wrote that the real lesson of World War I in the chronic cases was that the syndrome must be treated immediately to prevent consolidation of the neurosis into its chronic and often intractable forms. He identified traumatic neurosis as a physioneurosis, thereby stressing the concomitance of somatic and psychological symptoms. Gardner developed his own concept of the affective ego, and he postulated that ego contraction was a major mechanism. Post-traumatic psychiatric symptoms in military personnel fighting in World War II were reported as early as 1945 by American psychiatrists Winkler and Spiegel. Their book, Men Under Stress, is an excellent reflection of psychiatric thinking of the time. It remained a classic treatise on war psychiatry because of its detailed description of 65 clinical cases, its reference to psychoanalytical theories, and the description of cathartic treatment by narcosynthesis using barbiturates. Winkler and Spiegel distinguished acute reactions to combat from delayed reactions after combat. The latter included war neuroses, designated by the euphemism operational fatigue syndrome in the Air Force. Other chronic consequences of combat included passive dependent states, psychosomatic states, guilt and depression, aggressive and hostile reactions, and psychotic-like states. During the Vietnam War, the principles of treating psychiatric casualties in the forward area were successfully applied, with a correspondingly low level of acute psychiatric casualties, 11.5 per 1,000 men per year. In contrast, the incidence of alcoholism and drug abuse was high. Similarly, the latent delayed effects of combat exposure in the form of PTSD were a significant source of suffering and disability among veterans in the United States. An estimated 700,000 Vietnam veterans, almost a quarter of all soldiers sent to Vietnam from 1964 to 1973, required some form of psychological help. The prevalence of delayed and chronic PTSD, in spite of the careful prevention of psychiatric casualties of Vietnam itself, was a rude awakening. Trying to explain this paradox called for new hypotheses, for instance, that PTSD might be a common form of psychiatric casualty in low-level warfare. Similar profiles have been observed in the French post-colonial wars in Indochina and Algeria. This post-Vietnam syndrome, increasingly diagnosed in veterans in the 70s, ultimately led to the adoption of PTSD as a diagnostic category in 1980 in DSM-3. It seems puzzling that no such category existed in DSM-2, which hadn't even abandoned the further DSM-1 category of so-called gross stress reaction, which it was published in 1968, the year of the communist jet offensive in Vietnam. Now, I wanted to talk about this actress right here. And just to do a timestamp real quick, we are coming up on 1 hour and 28 minutes. 1 hour and 28 minutes into Heroes. Yeah, in the role of Jane Adcox. This is Olivia Cole, born in 1942, passed away on January 19th of 2018 at the age of 75. She is best known for her Emmy Award-winning role in the 1977 miniseries Roots, which was, in fact, the same year as Heroes. Yep, came out in January of 77, where she played Matilda Moore. Yeah, she played Matilda Moore, but she was born in Memphis, Tennessee, the daughter of Arvelia Cole, a tennis player, instructor, entrepreneur, and William Calvin Cole, worker for Grumman. After graduating from Manhattan's Hunter College High School in 1960, he studied drama at Bard College, New York, earned a scholarship to attend the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, where she graduated with honors in 1964. After returning to the United States, she earned a master's degree in theater arts with a minor in Scandinavian studies in 1967 from the University of Minnesota. Now, I want to stop here. I love this very long close-up on Sally Field in her phone conversation to her would-be husband back in New York. The way Jeremy Kagan handles this, and Sally Field, you know, you could see, you know, her, she's shaking. I mean, you can see the cord shaking, how she's, so torn on whether she ultimately wants to go back to the man that she was going to marry or stay with Jack. And just Sally Field really, really shows in this moment, some real emotional chops that she was kind of denied doing in Smokey and the Bandit, which is understandable. But I mean, here she really gets to exercise this character, and she's wonderful. She's absolutely touching. But going back to Olivia Cole, the other actress in the scene, she won an Emmy Award for Matilda, Chicken George's wife, in the 1977 miniseries Roots. But she made her screen debut in the daytime soap opera Guiding Light in 1969, later appeared in over 30 shows and films. She is also known for her role as Maggie Rogers in the 1979 miniseries Backstairs at the White House, for which she was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Miniseries or Movie. She starred in the CBS sitcoms Sissa Simnek from 1977 to 78 and Report to Murphy in 1982. She was also cast in the ABC drama miniseries The Women of Brewster Place with Oprah Winfrey in 1990. Previously appeared in another miniseries, North and South Book 1. She also guest starred on Policewoman, Family, LA Law, and Murder, She Wrote. Her Broadway credits include The School for Scandal, You Can't Take It With You, The Merchant of Venice, and The National Health. Let's see. Yeah, and she passed away in 2018 at the age of 75. 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 45 seconds. Wanted to finish this real quick. There's currently a measure of consensus on the diagnosis and phenomenological description of PTSD, which is recognized as a specific syndrome in individuals who have experienced a major traumatic event. Most modern textbooks concur in describing this syndrome as comprising 3 groups of symptoms. 1, the recurrent and distressing re-experiencing of the event in dreams, thoughts, and flashbacks. 2, emotional numbing and avoidance of stimuli reminiscent of the trauma. 3, and a permanent state of increased arousal. The first symptoms of PTSD are often delayed, and they are separated from the trauma by a latency period. However, once installed, the disorder tends to follow a chronic course, and the symptoms do not abate with time. DSM-4 has the merit of clearly distinguishing PTSD, a chronic syndrome, from acute stress disorder, which is short-lived and appears soon after the trauma. We tend to abusively interpret the literature of previous decades as if today's diagnostic categories had always existed. However, a clear distinction between acute stress disorder and chronic PTSD is usually lacking in previous works. Also, there was little attempt to predict the risk of developing PTSD. Providing the trauma is severe enough, most of it individuals who go on to develop PTSD. However, one puzzling question is that many survivors seemingly do not develop symptoms even after severe stressor. Likewise, the historical literature on PTSD offers few clues concerning for effective treatment. Once the symptoms have become chronic, the practices of forward treatment aiming to prevent the development of chronic disorders may have inspired today's psychological debriefing of disaster victims. So I think it was absolutely imperative that I gave some kind of historical background on PTSD and how it developed into an official term. And here again, 3 years after Heroes, and it had already been discussed among, veterans hospitals and, psychological studies in the 1970s. And just by 1980, it was finally made official. It was made an official acronym. Yep. Yeah, and I think the car here, Harrison Ford's cool little ace car here, I think has reached the end of the road. Poor Jack is still under the delusion that he can hook up with his Vietnam buddies and start the worm farm. And so he's almost determined to go back because he's like, you passed it. But he just doesn't understand. Or he doesn't know yet, rather. Mm. Mm. Just real quick, I'll mention a few of the other actors. The actor who played Peanuts in the bar scene, that was an actor by the name of Michael Cavanaugh, born in 1942 in New York City. And he actually served in the United States Navy. He served in the Navy right after graduation, stationed in Hawaii for 3 years. After his tour of duty was over, Cavanaugh developed an interest in acting and began his acting career at the Children's Theater, made his stage debut in the titular role in the production of Winnie the Pooh. Other stage credits include One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Merchant of Venice, Are You Now or Have You Ever Been? An accomplished vocalist, Cavanaugh has sung tenor in such musicals as Oh Calcutta, Carousel, and 110 in the Shade. Michael has racked up an extensive list of film and TV show credits alike since the mid-'70s. He often portrays police officers, government agents, stern military types, lawyers, judges, and slick businessmen. Cavanaugh has appeared in 3 Clint Eastwood pictures, The Enforcer, The Gauntlet, and Any Which Way You Can. He was especially memorable as the head nasty bad guy in the exciting Chuck Norris action vehicle Forced Vengeance. Cavanaugh was terrific as obsessive and xenophobic chief federal security agent George Fox on the fine and thoughtful science fiction TV series Starman. That's right. He also had a recurring part in the short-lived early 90s revival of Dark Shadows. Among the many TV shows, Cavanaugh has done guest spots on Monk, Shark Bones, The Young and the Restless, The West Wing, The Practice, NYPD Blue, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Matlock, Star Trek Next Generation, Hunter, TJ Hooker, Vegas Chips, and Kojak. And he was the guy that actually stole all the money from Henry Winkler in the bar scene. I was too busy trying to figure out who David R. Ellis was. I was thinking because I had watched the Starman television show about 10 months ago. And I mean, his character was actually pretty cool. It just, I mean, it became very Incredible Hulkish, you know. But I do like the movie Starman, which I mentioned before, that Jack Nitzsche did the score for. And I like the show just as much. Absolutely. And we're on the precipice of reaching our final destination here. Very, very soon. 1 hour, 38 minutes. We are 1 hour, 38 minutes into Heroes. So yeah, about 15 minutes left to go. Whew. Just to let everybody know, tomorrow night, Sunday night, at 9 p.m., we will be doing a commentary for Sidney J. Fury's Purple Hearts, starring Ken Wall, Cheryl Ladd, and R. Lee Ermey. And that will round out my 3 obscure Vietnam commentaries for the weekend. Because, you know, last night I did FTA, starring Donald Sutherland and Jane Fonda, based on that documentary, based on the anti-USO roadshow that happened in the Pacific Rim. Highly implore you to check that out if you haven't checked out the movie or the commentary yet. But yeah, tomorrow night we'll be doing Purple Hearts, which came out in 1984. And I'm looking forward to checking it out right after I finish this commentary. So just to let you know, I'm immediately going to be starting Purple Hearts right after we finish this commentary. And then on Saturday night, and I just announced it, next Saturday night, I will be doing a 50th anniversary commentary for 1776, directed by Peter Hunt, based on the Tony Award-winning musical from 1969, and starring William Daniels, who is still with us, by the way, at 95 years old, who plays John Adams. Ken Howard as Thomas Jefferson. Howard Da Silva as Benjamin Franklin. Excuse me. And Blythe Danner as Thomas Jefferson's wife. So highly encourage you all to check that out. That'll be next Saturday night at 9 p.m. And then right after that, on the 20th, I'll be doing Mike's Murder, neo-noir starring Deborah Winger. And last but not least, the last commentary I'm going to do in November is Philip Kaufman's The Right Stuff. This is one I planned to do months ago, and I'm finally going to be able to get it done here in just a few weeks. Yeah, Henry Winkler and Sally feel they get picked up by this couple about to go to their wedding and everything. That's cute. That's really cute. Yeah. Too bad they weren't able to keep the car, but of course by that time I don't think. Well, they might have had enough money to fix it at the garage. I don't know, but unfortunately they didn't quite get to it in time. Andrew Saris of the Village Voice said he wasn't overly enthusiastic about it, but could not stop thinking about it days afterward. It later ended up on his 10 best list for the year. Wow. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad somebody did. I'm glad somebody put it on their 10 best list for the year. I'm actually really happy about that. And let's see. Stuart Margolin also appeared earlier as the motorist. Yeah. Emmy Award-winning actor and director, born in Iowa, won 2 Best Supporting Actor Emmys playing James Gardner's former cellmate Angel Martin in The Rockford Files, and Margolin made his debut in The Gertrude Berg Show before becoming a series regular on Ensign O'Toole. I mean, like I said, very familiar faces, spread throughout this movie. Very familiar faces. The film was shot by Frank Stanley, who also shot Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, 1941, and Grease 2, as well as Holy Moses, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. Oh, The Big Fix. He shot The Big Fix. Shot one of my favorites, the Blake Edwards masterpiece 10, with Dudley Moore and Bo Derek and Julie Andrews. And The Eager Sanction, Magnum Force, and J.W. Coop, the Cliff Robertson rodeo movie, which came out in early 1972. Mm-hmm. So they finally arrive at this final destination in Eureka, California, where they meet the Monroes. And unfortunately, Jack is going to go off like a Roman candle when he refuses to accept the fact that his former comrade is no longer living. In fact, not only is he dead, but he actually died right before his eyes in Vietnam. And like I said, it's not until the ending when all this becomes absolutely clear. That's devastating. Like I said, not a trace of the Fonz. Not a single trace of the Fonz in this performance. I love Henry Winkler, and I love him in this movie. I was hit. He pulled me out. And like I said, I mean, this was 3 years before PTSD was coined. There was still a lot of misunderstanding about it. And see, I'm in the picture. Oh, and that's when basically they throw him out at this point. And if you notice, when he leaves, he actually leaves behind the box, the Eureka box with the worms in it. Southfield knows what it's happened. She sees it, she understands, and goes to run after him. Zach running day. He runs away from the Monroe house through the streets toward the water, plowing over the hedges and fences, running, and stumbles blind to the traffic. Carol runs after him, trying to catch up as he runs down the center of the street. As the traffic noise gets louder, the sound segues to the sounds of the battlefield, of guns, bombs, and men screaming. Zach yells even louder, trying to block out the sound that only he can hear. The faster Zach runs, the more blurred and confused his vision becomes. He flashes himself onto a battlefield, explosions blasting around him. A postman on his rounds becomes for an instant a Viet Cong guerrilla, and children playing become Vietnamese children, fleeing from the bombs. He turns to see Carol, but all he sees is a Vietnamese girl in white, her dress burning. Out of the valley comes a tank inside of the truck, soldiers and Vietnamese instead of American civilians. The sky becomes red with an explosion, and Zach is no longer on a city street. He is running amid burning huts and flashing bullets toward a helicopter landing near this Vietnamese landscape. Zach almost makes it to the helicopter when he is hit. He sees his own body flying up in the air, bleeding and screaming soundlessly. A man with Eureka written on his helmet, Monroe, reaches for him, and he starts to help him. He lifts Zach onto the copter. Then Monroe runs to another wounded man. Zach watches as a bomb goes off in front of the Monroe. Monroe drags other men to the copter. The copter rises. Zach looks to Monroe. He takes off Monroe's helmet. Monroe is dead. Zach's face turns red, and he looks as if he is he too will explode when he stops dead at the water's edge. Exterior, the bay. After several moments, Carol comes up behind him. She catches her breath. Zach. He says nothing. She comes up to him. Zach. She tentatively reaches out and touches his shoulder. Zach. Quietly and slowly, Zach says, I wish I was with him. Carol asks, what? I wish I was him. Carol says, but he's dead. Monroe's dead. Zach, I should have been him. Carol says, but he's dead. Zach says, dead? Damn right, blown away, carried off in a garbage bag. Hero, Distinguished Service Cross. He should have left me there to rot. He was a fool. Carol, fool? You're the fool. Zach says, go away. Carol says, he gave you a second chance. Zach says, go away. Carol, he wanted you to live. Zach says, go away. Carol says, sure, go away. That's right. Why not? I'll just go away and you can sit here and turn into a vegetable. Zach says, it's a goddamn dead end all around. Carol asks, what about Ken and Adcox and the guys in the hospital? Zach says, there's nothing for them. Carol says, nothing for them? They believe in you. You didn't come all this way to give up. Zach says, I'm not worth it. What about me? I'm not worth something if you don't care about yourself. Care about me. I exist. I'm important. I care about you. And Carol, she says right here, no one, what am I? Chicken liver, I care, I'm here. What do you think? I came all this way because of your worms. I mean, what do I care about your worms? I thought that my life existed till now. but it doesn't exist until you reach out and you care. And now I care, and here I am. Don't throw me away. Don't do what you're doing to yourself. To me, I'm more important than you are. God damn it. Very close to what's in the script. Very, very close to what's in the script. But this very, very powerful ending, which here again, Universal, why they did not pay for the rights for the Kansas song Carry On Wayward Son, I have no idea. This is stupendous acting by Winkler. It is. It is absolutely stupendous acting. Devastating ending and quite brave for a major commercial release. Exactly. It does not pander to Star Watchers. We get naked emotions and no fixed happy ending. Yep. 100% true. 100% true. And of course, what hits the emotion home is the arrival of the Kansas song. There'll be peace when you are done. Weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. The lyrics, they perfectly conclude the story in a very poetic and powerful way. And I love how when the camera, comes back and we see them, they don't get up and start walking off. No, they stay there. They stay there. They embrace. They talk. They comfort each other. They don't go anywhere. They're not in any hurry to go anywhere. And like I said, this pullback where we see the entire scenery of Eureka, California, and here they are, just hugging there in the corner. It's wonderful. Additional music by Richard Hazard, which I have a feeling is the music that was put on the DVD and the VHS when this movie ended. And like I said, it wasn't until Mill Creek Entertainment put out this Blu-ray. And like I said, it has no bonus features, but the movie looks perfect. The audio is perfect. The ending is perfect. They did a hell of a good job with the Blu-ray. And even here again, even if it doesn't have any extras, I'm just glad it looks great, sounds great, and it has that ending, which was not on the Universal physical media releases. And I love how we fade to black. We're still listening to the song. We don't listen to it entirely, but we still do listen to the song, and then it drifts out. Very powerful movie. I adore it. I love Henry Winkler and Harrison Ford and Sally Field in the movie. I think James Carabatsos wrote a hell of a script. And, here again, I can see how it became a $33 million hit when it came out in November of 1977. So at any rate, thank you so much for everyone for coming out tonight. John, MLB fan, Rob, Gasper, and That Muse, and Jessica. So glad you all can make it out tonight. I hope you all enjoyed Heroes and enjoyed my commentary for it. And I will see you all tomorrow night at 9 p.m. for Purple Hearts. That's it. All right. Take care.